VR is an amazing medium for gaming, and with things like the Quest 3 coming out soon and the Apple Vision Pro on the horizon, I wanted to talk about some of the best VR games that just don't exist yet. Some games that I would personally love to see come to the Quest 3 or some other future VR headset. Now, I've done a video about Monster Hunter as a VR title. I personally still think that Monster Hunter would make an excellent VR title. I don't think it would necessarily play the way that you're used to when it comes to Monster Hunter titles, but I definitely think it can make an amazing game. There could be a lot of stealth elements, still obviously hunting elements, but nothing near to the level of how it is in the actual base game, because of course that would be very sickening. But a Monster Hunter Village Researcher or something like that I think would be an excellent VR title. It could have some very Pokemon Snap kind of elements to it. And really, if you guys want just a full breakdown of like a Monster Hunter VR title, check the link in the description below, or in the top right card there, or in the in-screen cards or something like that, because I've made a video on it before in the past, and I definitely think those points, I don't want to reiterate them here. So, number 2 on the list, of course, is an Animal Crossing VR title. We have something similar to it. We've had stuff similar to it before in the past, but I think definitely just a proper Animal Crossing title with all the characters we've grown to love over the years in a VR setting, I think would just be amazing. It really speaks for itself. I mean, fishing... Come on, like fishing by itself, catching bugs, digging up shells, or not shells, why am I saying shells? Fossils, digging up fossils. Maybe they could remove blathers or do something different with blathers where, you know, you could kind of reveal what the fossils are yourself. There could be a fun mini game there where you have a fossil and you set it up on some kind of special workbench or something, and you use special tools to decipher what kind of fossil it was or something. That could be fun. It could even, you know, be an alternate thing where like, oh, you can do that, but you risk breaking it, but you're guaranteed to get rarer results or something. But if you give it to Blathers, then he'll just automatically, you know, do it himself or something. There could be all kinds of fun elements with that. Of course, just talking to other villagers and interacting with them in some unique VR ways could be awesome as well. I think just honestly, Animal Crossing as a whole would just be perfect for virtual reality. And moving on to something not so Nintendo related, we have Call of Duty. And again, this one is a basic and obvious one for a lot of people. Call of Duty in VR. A lot of people already assume things like Pavlov or Contractors or those kinds of games are already basically Call of Duty in VR, and so we don't want that. But I disagree. I think something more along the lines of Call of Duty, maybe a Modern Warfare virtual reality game or something, again with characters we know from the franchise. Some more guns we're familiar with, maybe gunplay that we're more familiar with or something like that, some maps that we're familiar with. Plenty of people already mod Call of Duty maps in Pavlov and Contractors and all these other virtual reality gun games. I would just think it speaks for itself. Call of Duty, obvious. But moving back to Nintendo, we could talk about all kinds of different ones, including Star Fox. I think personally Star Fox would make an amazing VR title. Probably one of the best VR titles that Nintendo could release is the Star Fox VR game, because imagine, you know, you get to pilot the ship, you actually get to control all these different little facets of it, you get to toggle this button and flip these switches and do all these other special things to make sure your ship is flying in peak performance and perfection, and you get to steer it, of course, would be awesome. And of course, again, flipping those switches could do all kinds of different interesting things between, well, maybe it switches what kind of guns the ship fires or whatever like that, right? It could even have some ground missions or something. I think a Star Fox game just speaks for itself as well. A definite must-have. So it would definitely be one of the best VR games out there if they were to go out and do it themselves. The closest example of Star Fox VR would be something like No Man's Sky, where you get to pilot the ship, flip some switches, enter warp drive, all that other jazz. I think it could be more tame than that, obviously, because I don't think warp drive is really a Star Foxy kind of thing, but maybe it is. But still, and obviously, like, that being multiplayer, that would be so awesome. Being able to fly your ships around and fire at other people in a virtual reality setting, I think that could just be so amazing. Star Fox just speaks for itself, I think. And moving on to something a little bit different, Grand Theft Auto, I think, could make an excellent VR game itself. It would probably be one of the best VR games out there, especially if they use something like the Marrow engine to make it work or something. But it's weird because we were promised this a long time ago. Meta promised a Grand Theft Auto game in VR, and we still have yet to see even anything remotely similar to a confirmation that it's going to happen, I guess is how you could say it. So until we see even the slightest bit of hint that this is actually going to happen, we're just going to have to assume it's not going to happen, I think, because it's this grandiose promise that I think is going to remain just that, a grandiose promise that's just never going to come to light. But maybe it will, maybe it won't. Maybe even Grand Theft Auto 6 will somehow have virtual reality elements to it or something. That would definitely be a very, very big surprise. But moving on to a last couple of points here is some kind of X-Men related VR game. I think that could be excellent for a number of reasons. VR, especially someone like Wolverine, who is well known, you can have some fun with some more melee combat, because there's really not too many melee related things in VR besides boxing. I guess you could argue that like Bone Lab and stuff like that is kind of melee, but really it has guns in it, so you're going to be using guns 90% of the time. But I think something like a Wolverine one would be very fun, but you could just include all the X-Men in some kind of VR game, and being able to switch between Nightcrawler and Wolverine and all these different characters like Storm or whoever else. I think all of that could be fun, because being able to play around with those powers is really fun. There is, of course, a game somewhat similar to this where you can go into a sandbox with these powers, but the game is very limited, and it obviously doesn't have much of a story. There's not really much going on with it, and it obviously is trying to rip off these powers and call them something else and everything, and it's kind of a weird thing. So let's just make an official one. I think an official X-Men game, or some kind of official Spider-Man game, official Iron Man games, pick any superhero, really. Batman, I think Batman would do excellent. Pretty much just pick any superhero and give them a VR game, and I think it would do excellent. I mean, we kind of had like a VR Spider-Man and a kind of like a VR Iron Man thing before. Those weren't too good, but they were more of demo-ish kind of games, and they were really more a product of their time, I guess you could say, because VR was a lot more newer back then, and so the limits were a little bit weird. All kinds of things about it were weird. The controls are weird. All kinds of weird stuff like that. It's just really weird back then. But let's take what we know now in the modern era of VR and try again. Try some kind of Iron Man game, some kind of Wolverine game or something like that. Just pick a superhero and give them a game. I think Batman, especially like Batman Arkham Knight, would be like one of the best VR games out there. And so will any of these other things on the list. I guarantee if any of these were ever to be made for the Quest 3 or some other virtual reality headset, it would sell 1 million copies overnight or something. It would be as good as like something like Half-Life Alyx or something. People would flock to it and download it immediately. But these are 6 or 7 games that I think would be the best VR games, and of course they don't exist yet. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think would make an excellent VR game, whether it be something I listed here or something that you personally think of. Let me know. I would love to hear it, and maybe open up a discussion about that for future videos potentially. But for now, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please do consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and doing all of those wonderful things like that. Because when you do wonderful things like that, not only do you get access to wonderful content such as this, but you also get to become wonderful yourself. And I think we all want that. So do those wonderful things, and until next time, stay wonderful. That was the wrong outro.